Cashflow Diary podcast, episode 527.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because we are going to talk about something that absolutely matters to each and every one of you and your businesses right now, whether you realize it or not. We are talking about branding, marketing, and most importantly, staying relevant. One of the things that we all must do is we must find that audience, stay relevant with that audience, because they will quickly forget about us unless we're doing the right things. You got to know where they are, who they are, why they're listening and looking or even shopping with you in the first place. And I think what you're going to learn today is how to do exactly that. Now, for those of you who happen to have a business or service that is targeted toward a younger demographic, you're probably going to benefit the most. But here's what I know, that our guest today, Gregg Whitt, is going to help all of us become bigger, better, badder entrepreneurs because he is the Chief Strategy Officer over at Engage Youth. And what it comes down to, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly what he does. Now, you must know that he's a former pro skateboarder, which I have never met any of them. So this is going to be interesting just to think about. To me, it's like, wow, skateboarding. My feet were just too big and skateboards never really worked out. But he's also a dad. And I think that's cool too. But ultimately, when you say serial entrepreneur, someone who's there, dedicated, making sure that entrepreneurship and that message continues to grow and flow, well, that's Gregg. Nonetheless, today, ladies and gentlemen, here's what I want you to do. I want you to get ready to receive quality information. Get ready to learn, get ready to love, and let's listen to Gregg Whitt. Gregg, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad that you are here. We've got lots of questions for you, but before we go there, I have to ask you the same question I tend to ask everybody the first time that they're here. You ready?
Let it rip.
Okay. So I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes, like Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, etc. Because I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. For example, I can imagine myself, if you will, like a superhero flying around town, using our products and services, saving our customers one sale at a time. And yes, at that moment, I'm probably wearing a cape. However, just like a superhero, an entrepreneur has a beginning. So if you think about Spider-Man, there was a time where he was just a kid going to school, doing his thing. And then one day he gets bit by a spider, discovers he's got a superhuman ability, and now he has to choose whether to use it for good or for evil. So my question to you is as follows. Before your book, the Gen Z Frequency, before Engage Youth, before even being a pro skateboarder or dad, what we really want to know is, who is Gregg Whitt?
Ooh, yeah, I'm the guy who brings everyone together for the party. No, that's probably just my gift or my love. I'm somebody who likes to problem solve in ways that are like, as you said, relevant with younger audiences. More importantly, that are relevant and connect with the cultures or the cultural background of the individuals and the people that brands are targeting. I mean, I guess you said before Engage Youth.
Yes.
So I know I'm trying to stay aligned with what you're asking me.
Well, we want to know the
that's
man
who I am.
behind the man right now. That's what we're talking about. Before it, the Gregg that we see in all the marketing and on stage and etc. We want to know who the Gregg, like the Gregg that first picked up that skateboard.
Oh, I was gonna say, so yeah, going there, it's just if you little back histories, and I was just the scrawny skateboarding kid. I mean, I think that's really the moment of where I first found my identity, where I first found, my passion, my heart for doing something other than, what everyone does is has breakfast in the morning and goes to school and tries to be a good kid. You know what I mean? I found skateboarding or maybe skateboarding found me. But when I was 13 years old, we built a skateboard ramp in my backyard, and I became a competitive athlete on the national circuit at that time. And we ended up building a larger skateboarding facility in a warehouse in Winona, Minnesota, and it became a cultural hub for professional riders worldwide. And it really gave me a chance to connect with a bigger world because I lived in a small town. It was a great town. It's called Winona, Minnesota, but it was a small town. And let's face it, we didn't have the internet or Instagram. Or wasn't sending snaps. There wasn't, Googling anything. If you didn't get in a vehicle or an airplane, you were a villager, you were a person of your community or your region, right? So right. The skateboarding was also my love, but it was my connection to the bigger world. And I didn't have any career plans. I didn't really think work was something for me. To be honest, I just thought work was what my busy dad did, and my dad's awesome, but he was a quality workaholic. So as a younger person, a kid, you saw that and you knew that was like, that's a good dude, but you're also like, I don't want to do that. Work's crazy. Like work means this guy gets up before the sun comes up, rises, and comes back, after dinner usually, or and looks busy. It doesn't look fun to me, you know what I'm saying? But I didn't have one aspirational career goal, but I knew, having cultivated this deep community of fellow skateboarders and just friends and people that were, highly creative, that I wanted to find a way to keep those good times flowing, and when I was 16 years old, later that year, I started a skateboard company called Good Times. And, because my friends and I were sponsored by major brands like Vans, and I was originally sponsored by Clockwork Skateboards, by a really underground brand by a popular skateboarder, Brian Patch, and we were kids, and as young teens, all we really could do was complain about the stuff that we got from companies, right? We were like B and C level sponsored athletes, but we could find a way to complain about anything. And I remember sitting at the kitchen table saying, F it, we're going to go do this ourselves and do that. And this is going to be how we keep this party going, but we also will have the things that we want and that we need. So that's a complex, long-winded story, but I did, as I said, started Good Times Skateboards in 91. And by the end of that same year, it became a global brand distributed in like 30 countries. And, that didn't suck. But it was also quite a roller coaster ride. Just having like a couple older mentors, a few different people that I could draw on. Thank God my dad also ran a vending and catering business, and they knew, general basics of running a business. So we had some guardrails, but not a lot. He was very much this guy that would say, here's the small college fund, good luck. But, you've got a labor job here, if things don't work out. But that was my dad, he was cool. He was like, this kid's going to figure out, and he's either going to make it or he's going to fail. He's probably going to do both. And I did. And, I don't know. I mean, you ask, your first part of the question was great because you asked who's the person behind this, whatever. I'm a business guy. I'm a youth marketing dude, but I didn't start off with a lot of confidence. People, when I was young, like people made fun of me. But not as bad as maybe some kids, today, but it definitely was made fun of a lot. And when I was in my teen years, having this skateboarding warehouse, this hub, this place where music and skateboarding and art and everything collided, I attained a level of popularity then for sure. And then when I started the company, I found out the other side of people where it was like, I heard people saying, or people would tell me, he'll never make it work. He doesn't know how to do that shit. He's never pull it off. Dude, you just see that guy, how whatever that guy is, man, he's too crazy. He'll never make it work. And I would just hear that. And I'm not saying that is what should drive other people. But for me, the more and more that I heard people tell me I wasn't going to make it, the more it became like part of my driving force. To just make it. I'm going to prove that guy wrong. In fact, I'm going to make it so good that we're in like 3 magazines. I'm going to be like at 5 different contests. I'm going to make sure that we show up in their town, and then I'm going to rub it in their face. Because it was, I don't think that rebellion is a Gen X thing, but man, it just like the group that I was in was certainly like the stereotypical just rebellion. Because different than it is for Gen Z, millennials, and everyone else. Like, I'm not saying that I'm not telling you how old you are, but I'm just saying that was a real deal. Like those stereotypes of jocks, skaters, whatever, you go on and on. Those were a real deal. That was something, that young people had to navigate. And so I kind of went through that whole up and down of being kind of sort of a bit of a kid who didn't fit in, right? I don't think that I was special or anything, but just a kid who didn't fit in to a kid who really fit in because had something to offer a lot of people, just putting it bluntly, right? And then starting this company, you started kind of going, wow, these people are really cool to me, but I'm giving them stuff. And then you're like, flowing people product, some guys on staff, on athletes that were paid, whatever, kind of stuff. And then hearing all these other people that you thought, man, these guys I think I'm close with these people, right? They're supposed to be my people. But either they're telling me to my face, which was a little bit more respectable. And then I would just hear it over and over and over again. Oh my gosh. And who's this kid? And clearly he'll never make it. And then on year 3, it's still hear it. Well, he got lucky. 5, what's this kid doing? Would hear that. And that was like by year 5 or so, I was like, damn right,
Right.
And even like at year 5, I still didn't even really know what I was doing. I just understood. I had just gone through all those lessons of sales, general marketing on the grassroots kind of level, print media, events. I still by year 5 hadn't really I didn't figure out brand consistency until, probably like I started my first agency in 99. So, and we're talking, we're way back there in the early 90s at this point with Good Times. So, one thing I learned about brand identity then was how to be, consistently inconsistent. And it resonated for sure. But when you look back, you say, oh my gosh, what could have I really done with that? Not like, I'm happy with that journey, but just, wow, we were so inconsistent. We'd spin up a new logo if we got feedback that said they didn't like the logo. Just one example. But it was an interesting, that was my, real world university, if you will. And it was cool. We did some pretty pretty epic things. I mean, it was one of the first 3 skateboarding brands to originate like outside of the East and the West Coast. So, Good Times, Molotov, lesser known brand, but Alien Workshop, very well known brand. We all stood for like our roots and basically had a presence in California on the West Coast, but that was mostly for branding and our athlete team, called influencers in quotes, right? But we would kind of keep it real and keep our base in Minnesota, and took some risks to do that, but it worked out, and that led to, and eventually China all of our boards were made in the United States, and then China started to figure out skateboarding, and there was a big shift in where products was manufactured, and became that action sports, but really that skateboarding industry became more of a price thing, and wasn't something that I was necessarily really good at. I was more about building brand and making really high quality product with, 1 or 2 of the top factories that sort of adopted me when I was younger, to be in this business thing where it was all price, and there was lower margin, and at that time I was offered to run one of 2 boutique footwear brands in the streetwear space, and with connections to skateboarding, but certainly a broader market. And so I launched 2 footwear brands before Nike came in and figured out the SB brand and took everybody out of business. But it was cool. I learned how to build footwear and apparel brands and sort of everything that was involved with that, which was also like a bit more sophisticated, and taught me really valuable lessons of to build a bigger lifestyle brand. And then I guess through friends and networks and my crew, I just ended consulting with entertainment and beverage brands, including that brand that put vitamins in water and everyone thought it was gross for a year. And I did a lot of influencer. I called it influence marketing now, but for them. And then in 1999, I started one of the first youth-focused marketing agencies in the country, and just kind of stumbled into it. I wouldn't say accident, and certainly stumbling is a bit wrong saying that, because you're basically, at the end of the day, what we're all trying to do is survive. And so I was on this, sort of self-made trajectory that ended up making so much sense. So, it's small, a little bit broader, and then broad, and then, an agency. And it's funny because I was doing a lot of this consulting work with sort of the premier playground company for their youth focused products, something I, started to got into. And I remember one day, this original company I had was Premise Immersive Marketing. And it was just we just did stuff that people asked us to do. There wasn't a focus, if you will. And I remember going into the president's office at the time, the late Barb King, and they were my couple of my friends or colleagues at the time. They were like, "You're our youth market consultants," and I was like, "Oh, that's what we do. We're consultants." I was like, "Okay, great. Then we better go back and change this agency name. We're a consulting and marketing agency. That's what we do." There's a business for that. I was so enamored in 99 that it was like the secret had been revealed. Like, there's this thing you can do, and you can sell your service, you can sell your brain, and you didn't have to buy stuff and sell it. And I was like, it's a thing, it really works. But that was just me coming out of this like long life of myopic, skateboarding, action sports, keep it core, keep to your core audience, anything too mass market's a sellout. This is just where I came from.
Right.
But it's cemented me in everything that I know today, right? So I just understand, how to connect with culture and inherently the sort of principles and so forth around, youth marketing that are timeless, and and eventually you get older and you learn frameworks and strategy and how to build bigger businesses, and at that point I've sold a youth marketing agency. I've been very successful since '99, just kind of growing upward, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, but just always up. And I sold my agency, Immersive Youth, to a company, and did 2 years time as an executive vice president. Learned the bigger agency, executive vice president guy role, and did my time as contracted, and launched my new agency, Engage Youth Co., with arguably some of the most brilliant people in the youth marketing space, people we've worked with for 20 years, except for the Gen Zers, probably like 4. But launched it last Wednesday, man. So I'm an entrepreneur in the heat of it right now. I'm just thankful that some of these Fortune 100 companies wanted to buy into my vision and be part of it. So I was able to onboard with clients that'll be released coming up when our work is launched or released, so to speak.
Now, in listening to your story, there's something that I see as a through line, and you called it surviving. I often call it adapting or dying. You have no
I like
choice.
it. I like that too. Yeah.
And yet, in today's, marketplace, one of the things that businesses must do is figure out how to adapt. And part of that adapting, at least, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I think you're going to agree, is regardless of what your product or service is today, it seems as though building an audience is something you must do regardless, whether you feel like, you're a personality online or social media. You must produce content in some written, visual, or audio format. What do you say about that? Hello there, entrepreneur. This is Jay Massey, and what I want to say to you is that the number one mistake that I have ever made in business, number one, has been waiting too long to do the books, waiting too long to get the bookkeepers, the accountants, the CPAs, the CFOs involved, and I don't want you to make that same mistake. That mistake cost me over 6 figures, and now for a significant discount, you have the ability to get your books together using FreshBooks. So what I want you to do is I want you to go over to gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary. Again, that's gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary. FreshBooks is the easy to use software designed to help you, the small business owner, the freelancer, get organized and save time on invoicing, getting paid faster, keeping those books in order so that it becomes a bonus for you to do your taxes as opposed to a burden. Go over to gofreshbooks.com/cashflow diary and get started today. And now let's get back to the rest of the story.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're an audience, you build a following, however you want to call it, or you're risking, a one-hit wonder. You're risking everything if you don't have an audience of people that are passionately subscribing to whatever it is that you're putting out, a product, a message, a service. I think just pure convenience and pure utility. There's a few places for that. I mean, particularly in monopoly industries, but everything is. It's like, I don't even like saying this, but everything is disruptable. I mean, I don't want to go down the whole like disruption thing. It's a weird word, but I think, but if you are thinking about focusing on building an audience, it's mandatory. It's not an option.
Well, I just know that there's a number of people who maybe feel like, well, I have brick and mortar, I have a retail, or specifically, there's in the real estate investing world, And even more specifically, we practice short-term rentals. So we have, a bevy of short-term rentals in various jurisdictions, and many of the people who listen do the same. It can feel like, oh, I don't need to do that. That can be the attitude. My position has been, no, I think you do, but I would love to hear your thoughts. Why even someone who's in an industry like, real estate or some brick and mortar business it's still necessary.
Well, look, even in its fundamental, use of building an audience or function, is that you're sharing stories that are going to attract the renters, that are going to attract investors. Sometimes it's just awareness to break through the noise. Let's face it also, like sometimes people buy or make big decisions because they like you.
Right.
And I see, I can't name like the names right now, but even just on LinkedIn with LinkedIn video, I've seen a lot of really successful. I believe they portray that they're successful. Let me say that, but they tell stories about, how they got into the real estate, and they're not necessarily the features of what they have to sell. They're not selling a property per se, but they might have an artistic expression of showing it. But they're talking about how they got into it, why they care about it. They're just telling their particular story around that. And yet, what they do. And there's several of them that and I wish I could recall them. That's not what I thought we were going into, but I think it's good. But I would consider talking to them about a property just because of, like, I know who they are. And then they've given me this, which is really important about building an audience, because let's just face it, you're starting, if you're building a quality audience, you're establishing some level of trust. And trust is, there's no industry, no business that having a trusted group of people you can't benefit from, right? So I think that's inherent with building an audience. People will trust you, and I think, I've run into this all the time. So I guess I just haven't tackled it from a real estate perspective recently. But I don't need to do that. What I have heard though, this will surprise you, and I won't.
What's that?
I won't cross any confidential lines or anything. But I have been in boardrooms very recently where, I've been, because, I actually work, I do this work. I'm not just this guy who talks about it all the time. So I'm just throwing that out there. But I've been in the boardroom recently where, we've developed an influence, focus sort of strategy with brand collabs, and you'll be moving on down through the presentation, explaining this program, if you will. And all of a sudden, someone around the CMO sort of level says, why do that? And I'll go, oh, well, let's take a break. Hold on. Why? Let's see. Clearly we didn't, explain the strategy well enough. So let's talk a little bit more why about doing this. And then let's tip our hand to the sort of the earned media value at the end, the outcomes. No, why? I'm like, what? Knocked off my seat. And to hear this in 2018, 2019, why should and this is retail, because I wanted to touch on something you said with retail, why should we do that type of marketing when we do, broadcast TV, and our TV commercials are very successful? And I just slump back in my seat and I just think, well, how am I going to answer this? How am I going to break it to this person that is probably inevitably in charge of my fate here? Tell them that it ain't working.
Right.
You can't measure that you're reaching this audience. It's not happening, my friend. And to say that in such a nice, elegant way that doesn't hurt their feelings, because these companies for the last several decades have their friends and their colleagues, their buddies, and they produce these beautiful commercials and just live in the false perception that that's what's working. Now, I'm not here to say that TV's bad or it doesn't do something at the top of the funnel, but you can't tie that to a conversion. It's not happening, and we all know that there's some mix of integration that moves the needle always. And so it's just amazing, the problems out there that are actually so basic that you can solve. But we're talking about audience building, so
yeah. Well, and let me ask you this: let's pretend an entrepreneur starting today. They woke up this morning. They're like, you know what? I'm gonna start something. I'm gonna make something happen. Do you have a go-to strategy that can help them reach their target market in the most efficient manner?
Yeah, I do. I don't know if it's right for everyone, but it's principle based.
Okay.
I think first you before you even think about truths or principles, first you just have to say, what's my purpose, right? And I'm not here to be the guy who's like the millionth person to start preaching purpose driven, but honestly, what's the purpose? but what's the purpose, right? I mean, I knew my purpose. I told you my purpose. My purpose was simple. I wanted to keep the party going. I wanted to bring people together. Like, that was my purpose. It still is. But I didn't go try to make one.
Right.
I think it's to have a real why, like, what are you doing? It could change. It doesn't have to be cemented in stone necessarily, especially for younger entrepreneurs, especially. But to really have like something that you really are going to be into and have a purpose. So let's just say that there's a purpose or there's just some value you're really creating. You feel that you can create value. Then I walk people through a relatively sophisticated framework, but I start with identity and really try to figure out not only like who they are and their identity, but what's going to be the perception of the consumer, the customer, the inevitably the audience, and to really try to see that from both sides and develop something, whatever it may be, that's authentic. Because authenticity is not everything, but authenticity is the foundation. It's the beginning point. Like, that identity needs to be glued together from both how it communicates what you want to do and what the perception of that customer is, that it feels authentic. It feels like, oh, that's something I can relate to. And then the next thing that I bring either, entrepreneurs or young people through is trust. Like, how are you going to, because trust is truly everything, right? It's the absolute, because that's like a gate that you have to get through. So how are you going to bring whatever it is you do to life and be trusted? Now, that would take a lot longer to talk through, but it's earned too. It's not just like you just do this, and this, but like there are ways to build that trust. And before moving on, being transparent, being a communicator, being honest and open, and really communicating the things that are going well and things that aren't. I mean, that's a really important one. But then when you've established an identity that's relatable, that's an identity that your audience cares about, then you've started to walk down the pathway of earning trust. Now you're ready for relevance.
Yeah.
You're ready to be in the right time, the right moment. You're ready to create the right products, just to be there in with the times, not necessarily trend following, not even necessarily trend leading, but just what's right for you and what's right for that audience. And only sort of you and your brand knows that. But that's where the special stuff starts. But you can't leave it there, right? That's not going to stand apart. The brands that are standing apart, these entrepreneurs that are succeeding are finding, I believe the most successful, by the way, are ones that are finding a way to help their customers reach further with possibility. So that next piece is possibility. It's that aspirational. Like, what are you doing? Like Nike is just do it. And I don't know. I think that they do live up to that.
Yeah.
I do believe that there's something inherently there. And, but that, and see, if you're, it's hard. No, doing the aspirational, that kind of possibility work it's not easy. Let's just be clear, right? There's nothing easy about really truly delivering on that. But if you do, if you do deliver on that, then you're ready for creating the experience, an experience that, most importantly, look, we can talk experience in lots of different ways, and experience, and this all weaves through one another, right? It's not completely linear, but I'm talking it through steps. But if this experience is something like sort of beyond memorable, and that experience is something that can bring people together and create a sense of belonging, now the overall package is magic. It's pure magic. But you got to execute.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, all this is nice on paper. It's nice on video, but it's hard to create and then build and then maintain a new company. I've done this quite a few times. I've helped well over 100 brands and individuals do this successfully. And then I started one last week, and I'm going, this is hard. My God. I'm like, what chapter of my book do I got to look at for this issue? Like, holy crap, I mean, you got to lean on everyone, and it is like building a brand, a business is it takes a village. Absolutely, right? I don't know if that helped. I mean, I feel like, that was my most direct, pragmatic answer to the question.
Yeah, no, 100%. Now, I'm curious to know, though, what would you say when you're out there working with entrepreneurs or just seeing them at various levels? What of those steps are they skipping? What are the most common marketing mistakes that people are making that keeps them from being relevant to not only the young audience, but any audience?
No, a lot of times it's just what we as entrepreneurs think in our own head. So a lot of times the mistake is that we're just not listening to our customer or our targeted potential customer. And so we're caught in our head. I'm just talking about my own guilt of doing this. And what I've observed is that we think we have this great solution when we might, but we potentially have missed the mark. And I've certainly done this in the past where we haven't really listened or involved our particular, targeted customer or audience or people in that process and that process could be, right, that whole multi-principle based approach, but just in anything, just thinking through your plans, your strategy, your product, your service design of that, really anywhere. I think a lot of times I guess it's really not just big brands, but a lot of the big brands, what I see is still that kind of broadcast mentality where they're just pushing messages. Because it's easier to push messages than to spark a conversation. Sparking a conversation takes, some skill, and it takes, an ongoing nurturing. And I think that is a really common mistake of just kind of treating marketing, even social media, which is supposed to be social, like a bullhorn, and treating the feed like inventory. And I could kind of go on and on. Yeah, I mean, those are a few. I mean,
Got it.
Probably we could do a whole podcast on all the mistakes that the companies make.
No doubt.
Not that I'm the greatest at it, but I just happen to be at that position to hear those mistakes firsthand a lot.
Yeah, no, totally understood. Now, for those that have listened this far and want to pick up more and figure out more techniques that they could use to become relevant to their audience, what's going to be the best way for them to track you down?
Well, I think if you want to learn about what I do and my team is doing at Engage Youth Company, go to engageyouth.com. And if you want to follow the sort of advice and the tips that I provide sort of on entrepreneurship and youth marketing or reaching the modern consumer in general, would be going to LinkedIn. You can search my name, Gregg Whitt, or my handle is Think with Whitt on most social media, Instagram, Twitter, and on LinkedIn. But LinkedIn's my main place.
Got it. 100%. So I kind of have a final question for you because I'm curious to hear what your answer is going to be. There's there's just so many things that we've discussed and talked about, and there's so many directions that marketing can go. But yet, I know that someone listening has managed to get to what I call that precipice of decision. They've said, you know what? I can make this happen. I can take my company to a next level. I can make I'm going to do marketing. Okay. Apparently I have to. Maybe that's their decision, but like I know that when you reach that precipice, what often happens is that we have a companion, and that companion comes in the form of a voice, and it's a voice that reminds us how it won't work. And kind of like you said, who is he to, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, you're going to do what? You're crazy. Don't you remember what happened last time? And for some people, they're related to that voice. So
oh, yeah.
My question to you is as follows. Let's pretend that this time it's going to be different. This time they're going to follow through. In fact, Greg, they're going to do exactly what you say, and they're going to do so in the next 24 to 48 hours. What would you suggest that they do?
I would suggest that, just because I don't have any context, so I would suggest that anything that you do, you get really, really good at selling and communicating with full clarity your idea or your solution with a framework of what, why, what, how, and why, and be very, very clear and practical about what your outcomes are going to be, and make sure that those outcomes are brilliantly connected into the what and the how, and that why matters. It's like that your audience gives a shit about the why.
Yep.
Because if they do, if things start to go wrong, chances are you're going to increase the likelihood of being successful. Now that is my answer to the nebulous situation, right?
Well, we didn't want to make it too easy for you.
I know.
Okay, so I definitely want to be the first to say that I appreciate the fact that you're adaptable, that you've been malleable. You've made the changes that have been required to make the self-made path a possibility for yourself, and you're assisting other companies in doing the same thing and spreading their message and helping that to happen. So I definitely appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge, your wisdom, and your insight here with us today at the Cashflow Diary.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm definitely going to pull some of your quotes from the beginning too. You rock.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean today? Well, honestly, I think it means that it's time for all of us to get a little bit more clear, understanding that identity, building that trust, and helping to communicate what is possible when it comes to using our products and services. Because at the end of the day, like I know, nothing happens until there's a sale, but that sale is built with identity, trust, and possibility. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you guys today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.